Okay, we are just getting ready to get started. If you're watching the recording, waiting for people to join. Hey, Carrie. Hey, good to see you all. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Kathy. Yeah, let us know how you're doing. Any questions or ahas or breakthroughs? How have you found the masterclass so far? Please make sure you do the in the chat, do the drop down menu, do click everyone. Otherwise, only Anne and I can see your answer. Hey, Phyllis. Hey, Robert. Yeah, let us know. Today is one of my favorite days, I'm going to have to say, because we're really going to get into the meat and potatoes of it, metaphorically. Some really kind of what I think is the engine of an alcohol problem. So I think you will find a lot to relate to and a lot of really good content. Oh, well done, Sherry.
Good for you.
Yeah. I really try and kind of not look up at my emails at a certain time. My assistant Louise is in Australia, so when I'm finishing for the day, she's starting, and I sometimes get a flurry of questions that I'm like, oh, I just answer these.
Amazing.
But yeah, it's really. Can you remember what was it like in the world of work in the 80s when you just left work, right? And nobody could get hold of you.
You just left work. It was so different. I remember being at McGill University and I arrived and they handed me a BlackBerry and I thought, this is an electronic chain, basically handcuffs.
Yeah.
I am now responsible to be incommunicado around the clock. And it was true.
It is, isn't it? I mean, years ago, the world didn't stop turning. We did just leave the work and nobody could get a hold of you and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Phyllis is saying she's finding these classes emotional. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. We're getting into some meaty stuff.
Yeah, and Phyllis, I think I said on Monday that some of this work will be triggering for you, and that's an invitation. It's an invitation to grow, and to support yourself, and to know that you are going to survive your feelings, and it will be okay. A lot of you are going to find that this work has been calling you for some time, right? We just keep trying to like not see what needs to be done and buzzing around the edges and all that kind of stuff, but this work has been calling us for a long time. So yeah, and of course we don't want to make people feel we don't want you to be upset, but it's also part of the process. This isn't, we can't do this work without getting in touch with our feelings. That's the whole point. So know that you will survive your feelings. So we'll get started in just a minute. I want to announce the winner. Let me just show you. So on Monday, that was the prize. I think on Monday, that was India. She won the cap. And then there was the signed copy of drink. Yesterday's winner is going to win a signed copy of my book, and that's Hannah Half. And I think I saw Hannah's name came up. Hannah, yay! You won. I'll send you a signed copy of my book, which I don't have to hand. But and then today's prize for everybody who does the homework, and that will appear in the Facebook group, is I'm going to send you a water bottle. Grateful, Powerful, Soberful. I'm just going to say, these are fantastic water bottles. This will stay ice cold I live in Alabama. It will stay ice cold in your car 4 hours. And someone asked, like, this, I don't ever promote my store, but I have a store, and if you feel like you want to get one of these or a hat or whatever, it's on my website, and Carrie will post the link for that if you wanted to do that. But well done, Hannah. And lots of people have applied to join the inner circle as well. And it's great to see so many people apply. And we're looking forward to talking more about that at the information sessions next week. If you are interested in doing this deeper work and working with Anne and I, and Carrie will post the information page for the inner circle where you can read. There's a lot of information about what we do in the inner circle, the times, dates, all of that kind of thing. And you can read all about it, and Carrie will post it there. And if you feel that you want to explore taking this to the next level and really get some information on the program, you can apply, and then you'll get invited to a information session. Okay, so we are going to talk today about resentments. Today we are working on how to have a sober life that doesn't suck. And really, there's a simple answer there. How to have a sober life that doesn't suck is you got to do the work of emotional sobriety. Basically, I definitely see lots of people who stop drinking and are still unhappy and uncomfortable in their own skin. And I'm not prepared to settle for that. I want more. So we have to do this deeper work. So today we're going to learn about why resentments are the free drunk, how activating events trigger us, and why shifting our perception of events is the key to sobriety. I think, as I've said through these last few days, that it's this shift in perception that is the key. And there's lots of ways we can facilitate a shift in perception, because if you think about it, you can't stay sober long term if you still perceive that alcohol is the best way to have fun. Like that's not going to work. If you still perceive that alcohol is the best way to reward yourself at the end of the day or relax, you can't stay sober if you still believe those things. Does that make sense to everybody? We have to shift our perception. I have to perceive that, there's no way that I could be almost 24 years sober and perceive that alcohol's the best way to have fun, so therefore I've missed out all my life. I mean, I feel the complete opposite. I have JOMO, the joy of missing out on all that drunken craziness, because I've had so much fun sober. Okay, so does everybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about resentments? Resentments or activating events is another way of looking at it. And let me explain what I mean by that. Activating events are when we are activated, right? It's when something happens and we are flooded with feelings and we have a whole narrative going off in our head where we're just like, oh, I can't believe, like we're driving to work and someone, pulls in front of us really dangerously, and we would be activated. We would be like, oh my God, who is that? Da, da, da. And what happens is we can often carry that on. It doesn't leave us. We just want to tell people the story over and over. Does everyone know what I mean when I talk about that? So let me explain what a resentment is. A resentment is when we feel that we have been wronged, misjudged, taken advantage of. It feels like an injustice has happened to us, and it very much feels like it's not fair. And the reason that we must have a method to deal with our resentments is we drink on them. Resentments are the free drunk. What other people have done or said, or what we perceive that they have done or said, can rent a lot of space in my head and can control our lives. And I know when I have a resentment because it rents space in my head. It just rents space in my head. So let me explain how it works, why resentments are the free drunk. So let's just say on Monday, you go to work and your boss says something and he's just a real asshole. And you're just like really like upset and you just feel unappreciated and you can't believe that he asked you to do that and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, you leave that meeting and you're steaming. And you might go and tell a coworker and go, you're just not going to believe, you are not going to believe what he's just said to me. And your coworker goes, oh, I can't believe that's so, you work so hard. And you kind of like, you're getting these like, yeah, you're right. And all week this goes on. You feel kind of like you've got this, and you maybe you tell your partner, and maybe you tell your friend, and they're all kind of like adding fuel to the fire. They're all kind of like, yeah, you are so, like, you're so great, and he's such an asshole. And you feel really like, oh. And let's just say you are trying to get sober, and you're 3 or 4 weeks sober at this point, but you've had this week with your boss, right? Who's had a week like that with their boss or their neighbor or the partner, but all week they just feel really, and they go over and over it. They go home and they're thinking about, like, they're replaying the conversation in their head, and they're also planning how they're going to set it right. Like, I'm going to show them, like, you're just replaying it. That's the renting space in your head. Is that making sense to everybody? So that keeps happening. And then Friday comes along and you're 3 or 4 weeks sober. You really want to do it this time, but you are steaming by this point because you've told so many people and they've all agreed that he is wrong and you are right. And your coworkers say, are you coming to happy hour? And you go, you know what? Yes, yeah, I'm coming to happy hour. Yeah, after the week I've had, I deserve a drink. If you had the week I've had, and you had the boss that I have, you would have a drink too. That is the free drunk. What we want more than anything is we want to drink, and we want it to be someone else's fault. So if I go to happy hour and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 drinks, because of what my boss, like, I'm steaming. Like, if you've ever had the boss that I like, this isn't my fault. I didn't do this. This is because of what my boss did to me on Monday. That is the free drunk. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, I'm going to tell you, if you work with us, and I'll give you a warning, we'll take that away from you. We will take that away from you, because that is the engine of our drinking. It's the renting space in our heads. There is an event, something happens, boss, partner, neighbor, random stranger. It rents space in our head. We play it over and over and over. We are outraged. We can't believe this happened. It's not fair. And then alcohol feels like a really good idea to how we're feeling, and because we don't have any other way to deal with how we're feeling. Is this making sense? Who does this? Who knows that they have drunk on resentments? Resentments are very seductive. We love, there is something very seductive about that self-righteous feeling that they give me, right? And I'm going to tell you, so let me tell you a little story. This was probably, I was 17 years sober. This wasn't that long ago. I was the class mom for my son. I think he was in first grade at the time. And we went to the pumpkin patch, and I took some photos. And then I emailed the class with the photos of our kids at the pumpkin patch. Now, I just emailed them from my email, which has and it was different at the time. It was an email signature, just saying what I do. Just like, I think, I can't remember what it said at the time, but something like, I help people whose lives have been hijacked by alcohol, or something like that. If you've had an email from me, you would have seen it. And I was doing the class mom thing with a friend of mine. There's 2 of us. And a woman emailed back and said, thank you very much for the photos, but I need to ask, why is there a picture of my child next to an advert about alcoholism? And I just went, oh, how dare she? Doesn't she know who I am? And I don't mean that in, doesn't she know who I am on Veronica Valley? I mean, doesn't she know who I am in that I am a good person who helps people? I was fuming. Now, thankfully, my very wise friend, who was also class mom, sent an email back and said, that's Veronica's a class mom. That's her work. You will probably get lots of emails from her with that signature. That's just her work email. And it was, but I couldn't let it go. In my head, I was going over. So at the time, my son was also on a soccer team, and one of the coaches was the dad was a wine merchant. So he would send emails from the soccer team, practice times, that kind of stuff. And his signature said, the best wines from Napa, something like that. I wasn't offended. That's his job. That's not anything to do with me. So for 3 days, I steamed about this. And what happens when we have a resentment is we co-opt people into it. And so what I started doing was, you're not going to, guess what happened? You're not going to believe. And I wanted people to just kind of feel my self-righteousness, that the grievous wrong had been done to me and I was right, and this person needed to pay and needed to be set right and all this kind of stuff. And then what happens is so what that is gossip, and that's out of alignment with my values. When we have an alcohol problem, we leave ourselves by degrees. We become people that we don't recognize. And what I used to do with my resentments, I used to become someone I didn't recognize. Anyway, what happened after 3 days is I realized what was happening. I was like, oh my God, this is resentment. I have a very specific way that I write these out. I can't flick a switch in my head. I've done this for 2 decades. I can't flick a switch. I have to write it out in a specific way so it shifts my perspective. As I'm writing it out, I'm like, oh, and I'm seeing it differently and going, you know what? This isn't about me. It's not personal. Obviously, that kind of triggered her a little bit, but that's none of my business. It was dealt with really appropriately. I don't need to say or do anything. I wish her well. And, in my head, I was very, very close to sending her a self-righteous email. I was really close to it. And luckily, I had some wisdom and experience, and I didn't. And one of the things I thought was, what if our kids become best friends? Like, what if they in class become best friends? And I'm like, shit, I really soured the relationship. And I didn't. And once I'd written it down, all of that just left me. And I just saw that I was being a bit ridiculous, and I was restored to myself. So what we need is a method to deal with our resentments, because they are the free drunk. They will take you out to drinking quicker and more effectively than anything else. I think the engine of alcohol problem is resentments and fear, is not being able to deal with our fear and not being able to deal with our resentments. And I want to tell you, this work has given me the greatest freedom of anything I have done, because it goes back to what I was saying about freedom. It's about being free of alcohol, but it's about having freedom in our minds. That's the place we want to get to. I don't want to be renting space to random people who write me emails, or I want to be I've got a lot to think about. I want to spend my energy, my thinking energy, on things that are much more interesting and effective and relevant to my life. So and again, this is not people with an alcohol problem thing. This is, everybody needs to do this. I think if you look around, most of the conflict and problems in our world are due to people having resentments. You're not being the way that I want you to be. That's what resentments are. You're not doing it the way that I want you. I want you to be like this. And we think the answer is in the other person changing, and it's not. The answer is in us shifting our perspective and not taking things personally. The result of doing this work is that we don't take things personally, and that is the biggest gift you will ever receive. And what's your experience of resentments?
Oh, I drank at resentments. I had a very complicated relationship with my mother, who had a severe addiction to alcohol, probably going back to the time I was 5 or 6. And I was very resentful, and one could say justifiably, at an alcohol-soaked childhood, where I was the parentified child and looked after my siblings a lot of the time. But I knew that. I'd done lots of therapy on it. When my alcohol issue grew, I found I had deep resentments about that and would ironically drink myself about my alcohol. So childhood, no newsflash there, and learned that my mother was also drinking because of her childhood. So there's an intergenerational component that I think some other people could relate to if they've had parents who drank. I also drank at resentments about work. You're comical and deeply moving when you do the work resentment, because I was the senior woman in Canada's national news magazine, really, really male dominated environment. And I was raising a small child. I worked really long hours. I was suffering from burnout. In other words, back to yesterday, I didn't have good boundaries. I should have left the environment, as most women did when they had little kids, and I didn't. It was a glorious place to work, and I was fully resentful. So as my drinking grew, it's not a coincidence. My resentments were fueling it, and it wasn't till I got into first year sobriety, and I was in 12-step and did a step 4 or 5, and really unpacked resentment and saw my part in it. And I can now easily see that I should have gotten out of a very, very workaholic environment years before I did. Years and years before I did. And there's that bravery. I'm working hard. I deserve a drink quality. And it was toxic. For me, it was toxic. So resentments are everything, I think. And as you say, you do your homework, written out homework. I do too. And it's humbling. It's humbling to see how often we fall into the gully of a resentment. Easy to do, easy to see.
Do you think there was, so you were in a high pressured, that was high pressured, right, in newspapers, work environment, very male, with a drinking culture, in a senior position, where you would pick up resentments that enabled you to drink? Do you think you like that's set up really nicely, isn't it? Like, it's not my fault I drink because of this.
Yeah, and it's not my fault I win all the awards. It's not my fault I work really hard. It's not my fault I don't go out with the boys and drink after work. But I did go home, put my son to bed, and drink after work. And that's how I developed an alcohol problem. And it was classic, as we talked about the isolation of women in drinking. And I was a classic case. And the more I drank, the more I loved having an excuse to drink. And so my resentments grew. And by the time I got sober, I had really big resentments to unpack. I was foul with them.
Isn't it just, it's like night and day for me, the freedom of not being enslaved by this whole narrative that runs in my head about something that may or may not happen. Like being able to free myself from that, like, it's just the best. It's worth its weight in gold.
It's so true. And I mean, the simple exercise of what was my part in it, I can now see so clearly. My part was not getting out of a difficult environment earlier. And in terms of my mother, I learned in my own sobriety, compassion for my mother, a lot of compassion. And that was the healing that we went through before she died. And my resentments towards her disappeared, but not without some work.
Yeah. And there's a couple of good questions in the chat, which I'm going to get to in just a second, because it is about the how. And I want to be very clear. You can't think your way out of this. You can't like go, oh, Yeah, now you've said it like this. Oh, I feel just really gentle and loving to these people, right? I don't have that ability. Like I still have to have a specific method. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So the thing is about resentments is we often act on them. Like, again, I'm so glad I didn't send that email. That I was writing in my head, putting this woman right, this mother right. I was going to put her right. It really makes things better, because what we're doing is we are trying to get the other person to change or apologize so we feel better. This is the bit that's really important. In my head, I wanted to send her an email going, I have done this for 20 years. I help people get sober. I change people's lives. And what I wanted was for her to go, oh my God, you are such, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend. What you do is just such noble work. That's what I wanted in my head. It's ridiculous. Saying it out loud, it's ridiculous. But what we want, when we chew on and hold on to resentments, what we want, what we believe is that we need the other person to change or apologize for me to feel okay. And this bit's really important. That may never happen. So this is how you give your power away. If you are waiting on your mother, someone else, your neighbor, your partner, your boss, to admit the error of their ways and that they have wronged you and come and apologize for you to feel happy, you're going to be chained forever. I need the power to get free, regardless of what anyone else is doing. Does that make sense? I need to have the power, not you, not what my boss does. I need to have the power to get free, regardless of what anyone else does. We can't wait on other people to realize or to change. And I'm going to tell you, the likelihood of that happening with anyone is extremely rare. And that's what, that's the seduction of it, because it's the self-righteousness and I'm right, they're wrong. And when they see that or admit it or whatever, then everything will be made better. Resentments chain our mind and take us out of the present moment. So when I have a really good resentment, I can miss a whole day being in my head, plotting how I'm going to get revenge or show them or whatever for not behaving the way that I think they should. Or I will just cut people out of my life if they don't behave in the way that I think they should. Who else has spent a whole day or more feeding or nurturing a resentment towards somebody? And I'm going to say, when we do this work, there's two types of resentments. There's big resentments, and everybody has big resentments, like what Anne said, towards our mothers, or we will all have big resentments, usually towards the people we love. So the people we're closest to, people we love. And then we will have small resentments, which are ones we just pick up along the way, which is like the mother has sent the email, or our neighbor who parked their car in the wrong place, or whatever. And I want to tell you, it's actually the little ones that are a huge gift to me, that enable me to grow. There is so much growth in freedom in doing this work. I can't even tell you. All of the growth and freedom comes from this work. So, I mean, just getting free of the resentments I had against my mother, it was not an overnight matter. It's not something I just went, oh, and love and sparkly fairies. And it was a process that took time. And so here's the thing about resentments. Most of our resentments are formed because we have an expectation of someone to behave in a way that makes us feel comfortable. And it's usually because our expectations have not been met that we feel resentful. And quite often we don't realize we're not communicating our expectations to the people around us. So they haven't got a freaking clue. That's often a dynamic that will happen in a relationship. And then we feel resentful and hurt and hard done by or whatever, because our expectations that we had of that person or the situation were not met. And what we did was we never even communicated them. And all of that is how we set ourselves up to get drunk. We are, and again, if you work with us, we will take that away from you. Notice the seduction. Notice how much you want to hold on to it, because this is what we do in the 2-day retreat, by the way. There's a 2-day retreat that's part of the inner circle. This is the work we do. And that's where people have these like, we will take that away from you, because you will see that how you are, it's not anyone else, how it's other people, how it's you that's setting yourself up for this dynamic. I just want to stop and did you want to add anything to that? There's a couple of questions I wanted to see that I wanted to add.
There's some good questions in here, and a lot of people, you know, underscoring that this is the story of all my relationships.
Robert said, if I cut a toxic person out of my life, am I indulging a resentment or setting a boundary in a very concrete way? It depends. So if somebody is mentally, emotionally, or physically abusive, I would want to have very strong boundaries with them. We're often talking about family members, and we're often in situations where it's quite drastic to completely cut a family member out of our life, but we can have very, very strong boundaries. But here's the thing, I want to say, all of us are surrounded by people who are emotionally unwell. Have I, in my past, been somebody who was emotionally unwell? Yeah. Have you, Anne?
Definitely.
We've been emotionally unwell and said and done things that were an expression of that emotional unwellness. All human behavior is a manifestation of how we feel. So without knowing the specifics, it's hard for me to answer. But when we do this work, what we want to get to is like, how do we make how do we change? How can I be okay with this situation? And sometimes it's having boundaries. It would be one of the answers. Jennifer said, but how does one learn to let go of past resentments from trauma caused by family members? This is where I'm stuck, and it does make me want to drink to avoid confronting that person's situation. Anne, do you want to answer that?
Well, I'm just going up to the question. Can you read it again?
Yeah. How does one learn to let go of past resentments from trauma caused by family members? This is where I'm stuck, and it does make me want to drink to avoid confronting that person or situation. So,
yeah, I think it's, I came to see it as quicksand, or a leg hold trap that was going to keep me stuck forever in a toxic reality. And so I had a choice. I had a choice to cut ties or continue to dwell on it. Means setting boundaries. So I set some big boundaries with my father, who died of alcoholism as well. I set some big boundaries about my exposure to him, about my exposure to his drinking. But I gave up on the resentments about it. I gave up on I didn't forget the trauma. I worked hard with a therapist. So we do what we can do. We do what we can do, and I'll share an incident. So it's quite dramatic. When I was 7 months pregnant, at work at this national news magazine, big fancy job, my boss pulled a gun on me. And I said, never pull a gun on me again. I can't believe I was pretty cool as a cucumber. And he said, I'm not pointing it at you. And he lowered the gun. He said, I'm pointing it at your kid. I didn't call the cops. I said, Alan, leave the office. And I went home and I told my husband, I said, you never guess what happened at work today. Next day, go into the office. This is probably my biggest resentment in my life. Go into the office and say to my boss, the editor of the magazine, I'll never report to Alan again. This is what happened. And Alan, the man who pulled the gun, denied it, forgetting there'd been a witness. It divided the entire staff, big staff of this fancy magazine. It was on the front page of the Toronto Star, Canada's biggest newspaper. It was a big story, right? And so I had to continue to be in an office with a man who pulled a gun on me and wasn't fired, was fired years later, but wasn't fired. My resentment was enormous. Did my drinking ultimately start around that incident? Yes. Did my resentment around that office and those who had taken his side, saying I hadn't got a joke? I definitely had bitterness. But at a certain point, it was, as I say, the lake hold trap that was going to take me down. And when I was newly sober and learned a way to deal with resentments, the very first one I dealt with was this one. And there are just two ways of dealing with it. You know, I was going to go under with it, and tragically he died of alcoholism as well. So there's a lot of, it's a booze-soaked story. But bad things happen. Yeah.
That's a really good one, because that was nothing to do with you, right? You were going about your business, and someone who's extremely emotionally unwell did something that was incredibly dangerous and abusive to you. That's not anything you had any part in. Now, those resentments feel so justifiable, right? This wasn't you. You were just doing your job. So when something like that was very, very abusive is done, it feels so justified that to drink on that, right? Because it was nothing to do with you. But here's the thing: when we foster our resentments, it's like drinking poison and wanting the other person to die, right? That's what it is. It's like he's going about his day thinking whatever. I mean, clearly this is a very unwell person.
Yes.
You're the one who's suffering.
Right.
And this is clearly somebody who's never going to realize the error of his ways or anything like that.
No.
So we're left to carry it. And you said it, we had two choices. We are, and a lot of you are saying it, you're left to carry it. And the way you're carrying it is by using alcohol to carry it. We're saying there is another way. And there's definitely, you know, we deal with all of that. There is definitely situations where people have been harmed. Like someone has done something to you, you're just going about your business, and they were harmful and they were abusive. Nevertheless, we are still using that stuff to drink on, and we can let go of all that stuff. And there's a process. It's not an overnight manner, but it is a process. There's two really effective ways that I know to deal with resentment. It's a very specific piece of work. One of them is in the 12 steps. Step 4, really effective. The other method that I know of is based on rational emotive behavioral therapy. And that's what I teach in my programs, REBT. And that's what we'll be teaching in the inner circle. It's a cognitive exercise. It's a written piece of work that will, we guide you through it. We do it in a certain way. And at the end, what is revealed is a different path. You could do that, or you could do this. And I'm going to say, you know, sometimes what's revealed is the most important thing is you stay sober. It might be you stay sober and go and get some trauma therapy. Stay sober and have some boundaries with that person. Stay sober and maybe go and make an official complaint with HR. Let's kind of do a process here. It could be a million different things. But number one is stay sober to be able to move forward. Just looking at some of
Yeah, I think one of the biggest breakthroughs was the phrase that you indeed shared. You know, when someone told me of the drinking poison and hoping the other one will die is such an eloquent way of explaining the process. I got a lot of trauma therapy, did a lot of trauma therapy around this. And I remember sharing this incident with Gabor Mate, who talks about a lot about what happens when pregnant women and young mothers are traumatized. He was appalled. But I think that our responsibility is to do our work and metabolize what we have to metabolize. Alan was beyond the beyond.
Amanda has said here, I expected my parents to be good to me. However, they weren't. But I see you mentioned that healing from resentments take time and more importantly, the work. Amanda, so here's what's really important. This is the powerful shit. Excuse my language. When we do this work, what would be revealed to you is that because of those experiences, you will have formed a belief system full of probably quite negative and limiting beliefs about yourself. And that belief system is shaping your life. And here's the truth. Amanda, you absolutely deserve to have the best parents possible. So did I. So did Anne. So did all of you. However, that wasn't my experience. I had a very, very unwell mother and absent father who did the best they could, I guess, with the tools that they had. Me as a child, I deserve so much better than that, and so did you. And unfortunately, that was the situation we found ourselves in. And we have no power over that because we were children. However, as an adult, you get to choose your response to it. You get to choose your response to what happened to you. Do you choose to continue to run and numb with alcohol, or do you choose a different way? That's what it comes down to. Is now I'm an adult and I've learned a bit more, and I kind of understand things a bit differently, and I kind of don't like how I'm living. That's where I got to. I don't like my life. I'm really unhappy. Whatever I do, I never seem to get happy. I don't have any things I want. I feel crushed with insecurity, and there has to be a different way to live than the way I've been living it. Where is it? I was like, I just kind of believed there was a different way to live than the way I was living. I just didn't have the how. How do I get from here to here? Now I have the how. Does that make sense, Amanda? We can't change our past. And a lot of us, things happen that were nothing to do with us, not our fault. At a certain point, we have to choose how we're going to respond to the stuff that happened to us. And that's really what it comes down to. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm glad you're here too, Michelle. Oh, Michelle, I'm so sorry she lost her mum yesterday. Michelle, we are sending love and support to you. This is a fabulous webinar, not the not drinking the alcohol. It's deep wounds and need to be confronted. Is everyone getting understanding why we keep banging on about emotional sobriety? Is everyone kind of getting like this is hopefully getting under the bonnet and explaining why, you know, this is the work. This is why just stopping drinking but still getting resentful, that's a really horrible way to live, everybody. That's a horrible way to live. Oh, Amanda, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, we will talk about this in the VIP session. Our VIP sessions, by the way, have been amazing. If anybody wants to join that, Carrie will put the link in, because we will go deeper into this in the VIP sessions. Your words hit my heart. Yeah. Julia, just wondering, would the 5-month program reduce the need for trauma therapy? I think I need trauma therapy. I'm guessing that I could be resistant after the 5 months. First of all, I'm going to say you need to be sober before anything. Get sober first. So I think all things can be helpful. This is what, in my experience, is the most helpful way of doing it, is you need to be sober and you need to have a structure. So you need to have a framework. Back in the day when I went to every expert you could think of, and I presented with anxiety and panic attacks. So I presented with mental health problems. And they'd ask me about my drinking, and I don't know, it's probably honest, probably minimized it a bit. But it's like I was looking for someone to fix the anxiety and panic attacks. It's like trying to build a house and getting a window frame, and off you go, and just trying to get your window frame before you built the framework for the house. So build the framework for your house, which is sobriety and a practice that maintains your mental and emotional health for your rest of your life. And then my experience is then further work is revealed. So I spent the first 5 years in my sobriety. Once I was sober and I got that framework, then I went and did this and I did that and I did, and these things just will, layers of an onion will come off. I actually would not do trauma therapy in early sobriety. You need to have a firm foundation and support before you go into that kind of stuff. Would you agree, Anne?
Yeah, I would. I think that we have to be, squeaky clean in terms of having our sobriety under control. Trauma therapy is important, though, is really important. And nurturing people through new sobriety who have trauma, because it's so often coincidental, is important too. Yeah, the dry drunk, yes.
Yes, that's exactly what a dry drunk is not drink. And I'm going to say that's certainly better, because a lot of people when they drink are freaking human wrecking balls. So that's better. But if you don't do the emotional sobriety bit, you're missing out on 90% of what is offered here. 90%. And the riches that are on offered here are, it's all from the emotional sobriety work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the Inner Circle program. So if you have any questions about that, you can pop them in. But get your applications in so you can come to the info sessions next week. Yeah, Janet NC, you need to be sober first. You need to be sober and have a framework. I think any work that we do on ourselves is helpful, but I personally think the therapeutic work, the impact it can have on us if we're doing that while we're drinking is minimal. And it's obviously, we're not usually turning up to see our therapist or whatever intoxicated. But I mean, when we're in that like period of our lives where we're still trying to manage alcohol, and we're still drinking and all that kind of stuff, I think the therapeutic work just has a minimal effect. We're not maximizing what we can really get out of it. I think I know the answer you will give, but can you do this practice on your own once you're sober if you have the tools? Yes, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Right here, like I have a little setup. I have my little journal here that I've done it for so long now. It's just like I do it without even thinking. But yes, that's the whole idea. We're going to teach you how to do yoga to fix your back. And at the end of 5 months, you're going to be so much better at yoga and your back will feel better and you'll be able to continue with your yoga practice. And like I said, we in the program, we will talk about ways that you continue to support yourself. Like there's different options and that kind of stuff.
Cindy is talking about her father being sober for the last 10 years of his life, but utterly miserable, and lived in the past, and that her sister the same, or mom the same. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about emotional sobriety being key to being otherwise. Yeah. To dealing with resentments, to dealing with the past, to launching into the life you want, or as they say, a life you don't want to escape from.
Yeah. So let me just talk a little bit about the Inner Circle, because this is all quite relevant, because the way that this is set up, and Anne is bringing a lot of her experience of working with trauma into this program. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the we start with different pieces, and first of all, we're kind of just like laying out the pieces, and then as we get a bit further along, we go into modules that kind of join the pieces together. And maybe you can see a little bit of that here. It's like, we're going to do the resentment work. And often what is revealed is we need to have really good boundaries. Well, we have a module that's going to teach you how to have really good boundaries, and we're going to support you in practicing that. And then a bit later on, we kind of go into some of our childhood stuff, and we can see then how a lot of the origin of our resentments is in the childhood stuff, and all the pieces begin to kind of fit together. So we do 6 modules. We have, and it's all kind of, I won't go into them too much because you can read them, but it's all about creating a really solid foundation for your sobriety. It's the how. That's what it is. It's the how. It's how do I go from here to here? How do I go from the land of sobriety, believing that alcohol is the best way to have fun, excitement, and not knowing how to cope without alcohol, to a place where I don't need it, where I feel really comfortable in my own skin? It's the bridge. That's what it is. It's the how. And we do it with we have weekly calls. There's homework. There's videos that kind of explain what the modules are. There's a Thursday call for grounding. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I want you to kind of really have a good read of all of the different, aspects of it. There's a lot that's included. We have, it goes all the way through till summer. It's got depth and weight. This is not, we can't do this in 30 days. Like, anybody who's doing like, here, do my 10-day thing, my 20-day, I'm sorry, they're lying to you. That you can't do this. 5 months is a really kind of, it gives us time to work through some stuff. It gives us time to, here's the thing, we want to be in life. We want to be in life with life happening, so we can apply the stuff that we're learning to our lives. So we can practice having boundaries in real time. So we can practice dealing with the resentments in real time. Does all of that make sense? Again, we have emphasized, please make sure you do due diligence. Part of this is, we are such open books. We need you to trust us. Like, we need you to trust us that we can take you through this process and that we know what we're doing. We've run lots of groups and all of that kind of stuff before. So do due diligence, make sure that I don't feel that there's anybody who offers what Anne and I do in this one-off program. And there is going to be lots of fear and resistance that will show up. And the fear and resistance will show up in lots of different ways. It's going to show up in, I don't have enough time. This is the wrong time. I can't afford it. All of that kind of stuff. And again, nobody should impoverish themselves to pay for this program, but just notice how your resistance is showing up. And the real resistance is to changing. Because if you do this work and you show up messily and imperfectly and humanly, you are going to change. And that, even though I know you want that, it's going to feel really, really scary. That will all go away, by the way. It will all go. And you will be like, oh, I mean, I've done it. I've done it so many times where I've been so scared. And I've had to go forward and I've had to go forward. And I'm so glad I did. But I know what that kind of fear is. So know that resistance and fear will show up. Okay, let's do homework question. And tomorrow, thank you guys. So many, who's done every day so far live? I'm really kind of impressed with you. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about how to fall in love with sobriety, why other people take your sobriety personally, how sobriety is really a journey back to yourselves, how we leave ourselves by degrees. So we're going to be talking about that. The Monday, we have a bonus Q&A session. So Monday, we're just going to answer your questions. So you can email your questions. You can put them in the Facebook group. There'll be a post that comes up and you can put your questions and you can show up live and we will answer as many questions as we can about the training, about the program, about sobriety, whatever we can. The homework question for today is, what resentments have you drunk on? And the prize is a water bottle. So what resentments have you drunk on? And I will send you, this one's a bit battered, it will be a new one. I'll send you my lovely, so Grateful, Powerful, Soberful. I personally love that. And post your answer in the Facebook. And who's going to be back tomorrow? We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm just going to look at a few more. And then the VIP will start in 7 minutes. Okay, everybody. See you tomorrow, and we'll see the VIPs in just a few minutes. Bye-bye.
Wow.